Welcome to Intuitive Writer. I'm your host, Camille Chan. I'm a writer, a medium, and a story channeler. I have 23 published books to my name and counting. I have been writing novels for over 30 years, and for just as long, I have been channeling stories. I have spent my life in dedication to my craft, and what I've learned is that, contrary to popular belief, stories do not come from within. Stories come from without. Stories exist in the universe as energy, and they are waiting to work with writers just like you and me to be channeled on to the written page. I believe that so many writers out there are already channeling stories, but they're doing it from an unconscious space. I started the Intuitive Writer podcast and YouTube channel to help writers just like you shift from a space of unconscious creativity to a space of conscious creativity. Be sure to tune in every week for teachings that will help you incorporate intuitive writing into your everyday writing practice. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so grateful to be part of this creative journey with you, and I look forward to sharing with you every week. Thanks for tuning in. Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Intuitive Writer. I'm your host, Camille Chan. And before we dive into this week's episode, I just wanted to give you a little writing update. I mentioned last week that I was really close to finishing a new novel, and I think a night or two after I recorded, I finished my novel. I started it on December 20th, and I finished it on the night of January 19th. So it took me exactly a month, and I've been going back through and starting to do my first round of edits. And I have to tell you guys, this draft is probably one of the smoothest ones that I have ever written. And I know that it's all because of this intuitive writing practice. It's all because I incorporate the techniques that I talk about every week on this podcast. And I'm channeling the story every day, and I'm working with this energy that wants to come through me. And when I sit down at the page to write, I align myself with that energy and I bring it in, and the process is so smooth and it's so much fun, and I have so much clarity. So if you have not listened to episode 10 and 11, I encourage you to do that. I share some really great information that you can start implementing immediately to start bringing intuitive writing into your everyday practice. So be sure to check that out. It's time to dive into this week's episode. And this week we're going to be tackling two questions, two very important questions. The first question is, what exactly is intuition? And the second, and probably more important question, is, how do I use my intuition to write? And so that's why I'm here today, and this is what we're going to talk about. Now, I believe that there are two perceptions of intuition. There's a more conventional, I guess I would call it old school perception of intuition, and it's viewed in a very instinctual sense. I'm going to use this word. I hope it's not offensive. I believe that this old school perception of intuition is very caveman-esque, right? Because a bazillion years ago, cavemen did use their intuition, but they used it to keep themselves alive. They used it to keep themselves safe from bears and saber-toothed tigers or whatever else was out there that threatened their life. And you can say that with animals today. When a deer is in the wild, a deer might look around, and with its eyes, it might see everything in its place. With its ears, it might detect everything to be completely normal. But with its intuition, it might sense that there's a mountain lion just behind that tree. And a lot of people, when they refer to the word intuition, this is really the perception that they're talking about. This instinctual knowing in regards to survival. And you'll hear people talk about meeting somebody and right away knowing whether or not they want to be friends with that person or they're a good match in a relationship because they just have a good intuition about that person. Or somebody can walk into a party and know right away that, oh, I don't want to be here. I want to get out of here. Or, oh my God, these are my people. This is my place. I'm so excited that I'm here. And all of this is true. Intuition does all of these things. But this is really a limited perception of what your intuition does. Your intuition is so much more than a base survival instinct. So let's fast forward a bazillion years out of the prehistoric caveman time and let's step into 2021. And let's take a minute to put on some 2021 perception glasses and use these perception glasses to look at intuition in a completely new and expanded way. Your intuition is your spiritual antenna array, and it's out there to connect with energy in the universe and to bring you information and for the universe to contact you and connect with you. And it's doing this all the time. You're always in contact with the universe, whether you know it or not, and you're always receiving information. So I'm going to share with you 2 brief stories of intuition. The first one is about my daughter. She is a beautiful, intuitive spirit, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And she's currently homeschooling with her grandparents, my mom and dad. And as she was working with my mom on her schoolwork a couple of days ago, she said, "Grandma, I smell donuts." And my mom said, "Honey, there's no donuts." And my daughter said, "I smell maple donuts. Where are the donuts? I smell them." And my mom said, "Honey, I'm sorry, there's no donuts." And then 10 minutes later, my dad walks into his house, and in his hands is a giant box of donuts. And in that box are 2 maple donuts. And I should preface all of this by saying that donuts are not a regular purchase by my family. It's probably been 20 years since anyone in this house has come home with a giant box of donuts. But my daughter's intuition was completely connected with my father's, and she knew exactly what he was doing. So that's an expanded example of what you can do with your intuition. So now I'm going to jump into another story, and this one's about me using my intuition. This was about 6 weeks ago. I was outside on a bike ride with my daughter, and we were about a block away from the house, and I had left my cell phone in the house. And as we were riding together, I very clearly heard the phone ring. And I didn't hear it ring with my ears because the phone was a block away in the house and I was outside on a bike. But my intuition heard it ring, and I instantly knew that my husband was trying to get in touch with me and needed something. So I said, "Sweetheart, we got to go back home because Daddy's trying to call me." And so she said, "Okay." And we rode back to the house, and I came inside and I found my phone, and I had just missed a call from my husband. So these stories serve a couple of purposes. First of all, I again want to emphasize this expanded perception of intuition, that it's really the spiritual antenna array, and it's connecting you with all of this information and all of this energy that's in the universe. Now the main difference between these 2 stories, the donut story and the telephone story, is that my daughter was operating in an unconscious space. She was 100% connecting to her grandfather, to her grandfather's energy with her intuition, and she had no idea. And then on the other hand, you had the story of me hearing the phone ring and knowing my husband was calling me. That's an example of consciously using my intuition. I got the message, it came through loud and clear, I was connecting with my husband's energy, I knew he needed me. So that's the difference between being an unconscious creator versus a conscious creator. And what I'm really here to do on this podcast is to help you shift, because I do truly believe that there's so many writers out there that are already using their intuition. They're already making contact with their stories and the energies that want to be channeled by them. But I believe that most of you are operating from an unconscious space. You might have these donut moments where energy comes through and you get really excited because something really cool is connecting with your story or your plot or your character, and you just take it and you move on. But you don't carry it over into that next step, which is moving it into this conscious space where you're consciously connecting with it. So it's not just this random hit of information, but you're really learning how to lean into it and open yourself up and create the space for this energy to flow to you so that you can channel it on to the page. So I hope this explanation has helped with the word intuition and your perception of it, that yes, it is a survival instinct. It does function as a safety mechanism, but that's such a limited caveman view of intuition. It is this amazing muscle that you have. It's this amazing connectivity that you have to the universe, to the people that you love and you care about, and to your creativity and your stories. It's there to be a part of your creative process, but it's going to be up to you to transition yourself from this space of being an unconscious creator into a space of being a conscious creator. Now, in the next section of this podcast, I'm going to give you an exercise that's going to help you shift from an unconscious creator into the space of a conscious creator. Now we're entering part 2 of today's lesson, and we're going to answer the question of how can I use intuition in my creative process. So I am going to give you a lesson that you can start incorporating every day. And full disclosure, learning to use and access your intuition, it's not easy. It's not a switch. I wish it was a switch that you could flip. It's a practice. It's a dedication. It's a way of living. It's a way of interacting, and it's a way of making decisions. And it runs counter to everything that we have been taught since we were fetuses. And yeah, honestly, it's still something that I find myself bumping up against, where, I still find myself bumping up against it and having to, take a minute and recenter myself and shift into an intuitive space. And it just takes time, it just takes patience, but I do promise you that if you dedicate yourself to it and you start doing it every day, you are going to find yourself shifting from the space of unconscious creativity into this space of conscious creativity. And the shift is mind-blowing and it's beautiful, and you'll never want to go back. So, to use your intuition and to connect with your creativity and your story through your intuition, you need to shift your connectivity from up here, from your brain, from your mind. You need to shift it away from this space of logic and thinking. And you shift it from your head down into your heart, into your body, into your soul. And you connect with your story through feelings, not with your brain, not with your logic. You connect with it through feeling. You feel your story. You feel your characters. And through this proactive feeling, this proactive way of connectivity, that is how you bring your stories in with your intuition. Now, here's the thing about your brain. it's really fucking loud. Your brain, your thoughts, your logic, all of the stuff that exists up here, it's the schoolyard bully. The schoolyard bully wants to be the boss all the time. It wants to be the center of attention all the time, and it wants to drive your bus. And honestly, it's probably been driving the bus most of your life. It drove my bus for most of my life. Your intuition, it's a whisper. It's a whisper, and you have to learn how to tell your brain to shut the fuck up. And you have to learn how to create the space and how to listen to the whisper. And you do that by shifting your connectivity and your decision-making process and your creativity from your head into your heart. Because in your heart space, in your body, this is where your soul exists. And your soul is what's connecting to the universe. It's your soul that's connecting with these stories that want to be channeled through you. It's your soul that's connecting with the characters. It's not your brain. It's not your head. And your head and your brain, it's never going to go quietly into that good night, ever. So, like I said, you really have to shift everything, consciously shift that connectivity from your head down to your heart, into your body, and learn how to navigate your creative process with your feelings, with how it's feeling. So let me give you a couple of examples. On Christmas Day, I had a couple hours of free time between all of the meal prep and dinner time. And my husband said, "Hey, do you want to go hot tub?" And immediately my brain jumped in. And here's what my brain told me. A, it's super fun to hang out with hubby. He's my best friend and we always talk. And hot tubbing is one of our favorite things to do together. B, it was raining. And almost as much as we love hanging out in hot tubbing, we love hanging out in hot tubbing in the rain. It's like totally our jam. And C, if I went into the hot tub with him at that point in time, I would have had enough time for my hair to dry before the dinner guests arrived. So all this is playing in my head. And I took a moment and I took his question and I shifted it from my head into my heart. And I took a minute to feel it. And I felt like I didn't want to go into the hot tub at that time. I couldn't say why. I don't know why it didn't feel like the right time, but my intuition told me it wasn't the right time. And my husband's super awesome, and I just told him, that's what I told him. It doesn't feel like the right time right now, so I'm not going to. And he was fine with that, so he went out and enjoyed himself in the rain and in the bubbles. I stayed inside, I did some writing, and ironically enough, as soon as I finished writing, I closed my computer, and boom, all of a sudden, I was ready to go in the hot tub. And by that time, of course, my husband was done, so I was going solo out into the rain and into the bubbles. And as soon as I got into the hot water and relaxed, I started channeling. I've mentioned that I've been working with this character named Anton, and I had just finished working on one of his scenes. And up until this point, I kind of suspected there was going to be a book 5 in this series that I'm writing, but I wasn't 100% sure. And what I learned as I was sitting in the hot tub, that Anton's story, it begins in book 3, but that the completion of his story cycle is coming in book 5. And I began to channel him and his story, and I had almost a solid hour of channeling there in the hot tub. I mean, it was like a movie playing in front of me. I had my eyes closed, the rain was coming down, and like scene after scene, it was just pouring into me, and all I could do was sit there and receive all of these scenes and all of this information and all of this understanding about exactly where book 5 was going to go and where Anton was going to go in book 5. And with Anton's energy came the energy of a new character who's going to be very connected with him. So here I was receiving a brand new character and her story arc. And the takeaway from this story is that if I'd listened to my head and gone into the hot tub at that moment with my husband, I would have been so distracted hanging out with him and talking to him that I wouldn't have had the space to bring in this major story download for book 5. But when I took a minute and I shifted from my head into my heart, my intuition knew that the timing was wrong. My intuition knew that Anton was circling around me and he had a whole shitload of information to give to me, and my intuition helped create the space that I needed to receive it. And it was amazing and it was beautiful. And so this is what I mean about shifting your connectivity and your decision-making process and your creativity from your head into your heart. This is what it looks like. Your intuition is gonna lead you. It's gonna show you the path. Here's another little story of using my intuition rather than my brain. Again, it was over Christmas break and I was working on this scene. There was a zombie that needed killing. And so I wrote the scene. And as soon as I was done, I was feeling the scene in my heart space and I knew it was wrong. Now, if I had looked at this through a logical lens, through my brain, there was nothing wrong with it. It was a completely sufficient scene. There were no plot holes. The characters weren't doing anything like too superhuman. The scene, it worked. It completely made sense. It was a serviceable scene. But again, I was feeling my story through my body, through my heart, and I knew it was off. I didn't know how it was off, but I knew it was off. So, closed my computer, and I asked the universe, give me some clarity on this. I know there's something I'm missing. I don't know what it is, but help me see it. I went upstairs, I sat in a meditation, and as soon as I connected with the energy of the scene, it rearranged itself in front of me and it presented itself to me in a new way. And I had it. I realized, okay, that's what I missed. That was where I made the wrong turn. And it was very easy to go back and fix it. Now, unconscious Camille, many, many years ago, I wouldn't have stopped. I would have just kept pushing, right? Because that's what writing teachers tell you to do. Oh, just push through it. Just keep writing. You're gonna figure it out. You can always go back and fix it later. And I subscribed to this advice for years, and it's garbage, you guys. If you're not feeling the story, if you're feeling like something's missing, like you've taken a wrong turn, if you make a wrong turn and you're going down the street and you're headed the wrong direction, you don't just keep heading in the wrong direction. That's like the stupidest thing ever because you just keep going in the wrong direction, right? You stop, you get your bearings, right? You get your map out or whatever. You figure out where you took the wrong turn, right? You have to take a little bit of time. You have to stop, slow down, regroup, figure out where you took the wrong turn so that you can get back on course. So all of this rhetoric out there that tells you, oh, just push through, just write through it. That's just dumb. You don't have to write through it. You stop and you get your bearings and you ask the universe for help and you create the space for your answer to come. I go into this in depth in episode 11. So again, make sure you go back and listen to episode 10 and 11. But in a nutshell, you just need to give yourself some alone time, alone away from people, and alone away from distractions such as Instagram or TV or podcast, whatever your normal drug of choice is for distraction. And you make that alone time and you ask the universe for help and you wait to receive it. You could just go on a walk around the block a couple of times. Meditation is definitely my go-to. That's where I go to ask for help and connect with the energy of the story. But just as often, I'm just as successful when I'm out alone spending time in nature. So it's just a matter of giving yourself some alone time and some space. Or, maybe it's the bath or the hot tub, like I was just describing. Maybe it's just that, alone relaxation time. But when you feel yourself going off course, it's really important that you stop and course correct and don't just keep floundering along blindly in the wrong direction and hoping you're going to magically make it to your destination. Because you're not. You're going to end up tossing 10,000 words. I've done that so many times. And I just realized now how ridiculous it was that if I just slowed the fuck down and took the time I needed to find the clarity, it would have just been so much simpler. So here ends the story. And so now let's talk about your assignment, your takeaway in this episode. So what I invite you to do as you sit down to write, I want you to be checking in with yourself. Every 10, 15, 20 minutes, take a minute, check in and see how your story is feeling to you. Shift your connection out of your head, out of your brain bully, and down into your body and see how it's feeling. And you know what? You might feel like you're on fire, like you are all glittery and sparkly and you're rocking it, and that is awesome. That is the best feeling. I love that feeling. So great. If that's how you're feeling, fantastic. But as you make that shift and as you check in with yourself, as you drop into your body and you take a minute to feel with your heart, how am I doing? How's the story going? You might be surprised because logically everything might be flying along. And when you stop and you take a minute to feel, you might, something feels weird. I don't know what it is, but there's something off here. And that's your signal to course correct. That's your signal to close your computer and create some space, to ask the universe for help and clarity and to create space so you can receive the answer. I like to say, you can't hear the universe if you don't make the space to hear it. And that is so true. There is so much stuff out there that wants our attention 24/7. And if we're giving our attention to everything else except the universe, we're not going to hear the universe. We're not going to hear our story. So you really have to consciously make time and space to connect with these energies that want to work with you, to connect with your creativity, connect with your universe, with the universe. It's a conscious practice, guys. Intuitive writing, it's a practice, it's a way of living, it's a way of honoring yourself and your creativity, and it's a way of connecting with your creativity and your soul's purpose and your deeper purpose as a creator. But it is a practice, it's not a switch. You're not going to flip a switch and magically be intuitive. This shift that I'm talking about from thinking through your story with your logic-minded brain and dropping it into your heart and learning how to feel your story, it's a big shift. And it's not easy because, like we said, your brain, it wants to drive the bus and it's going to fight you tooth and nail. Some of you might be familiar with Breanne Brown. I think she's a pretty amazing lady. And she talks about this practice that she has, and she uses it to help her navigate social situations where she has to decide if she really wants to do what's being asked of her or if she's really not feeling it. And she talked about using her ring, and she'll take a minute to spin the ring around her finger, just to give herself that space that she needs to feel it out rather than think it out. And so this is something that you can do as you're working with your story. If you wear a ring or a piece of jewelry, just, spin it around a few times and give yourself that space to really, truly feel into it and see how things are feeling. Okay, so that ends today's lesson, today's teaching, and please feel free to stop by on Instagram at Write with Intuition. Drop me a DM. Let me know how it's going. Like I said, it's something I still have to consciously work with. We all have loud brains, and our brains want to be the boss. So I do have to consciously, always make sure that I'm in my body and I'm making decisions and navigating not only my creative life, but my everyday life. I navigate with how it feels and not my brain, and it makes a really big difference. So please stop by at Write with Intuition, drop me a DM, let me know how it's going. If you have questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them, and if I get enough of the same question, I can always answer it on a podcast episode. This brings us to the end of today's episode, and I really hope that you've enjoyed expanding your perception of intuition and how you can make it work for you. And I really hope that you start incorporating this lesson on how to use your intuition to connect with your creativity and your stories that want to be channeled through you onto the written page. I really hope you do. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be so appreciative if you shared it on social media, or if you shared it with your writing buddies. I would be super, super appreciative. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Subscribe on YouTube. I would really appreciate it. And in my show notes is a link to sign up for my newsletter. And when I release my Intuitive Writer Activation Workshop, I'll be sending out coupons to everybody who is a member of my newsletter list. So please sign up. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great week, and I will be back next week. Until then, take care. Bye.